The breaking point. The red dirt of Proxima Colony crunched under Lieutenant Maya Carter's boots as she sprinted between the crumbling concrete barriers. Plasma fire sizzled overhead, turning the air into a storm of deadly light. Sweat stung her eyes beneath her cracked helmet visor, but she didn't dare slow down. The communications relay tower loomed ahead, their last hope of calling for evacuation. Sanchez, Kowalski, covering fire. Maya shouted, her voice hoarse from the acrid smoke that had filled her lungs for the past 72 hours of non-stop fighting. The two soldiers pivoted from their positions, their outdated M98 rifles chattering as they laid down suppressive fire against the advancing Krell warriors. The aliens moved with terrifying efficiency, their armored exoskeletons gleaming under Proxima's twin suns. Each Krell stood nearly 3 meters tall, with 4 multi-jointed arms and reinforced carapaces that could deflect standard ammunition. Maya dove behind a fallen communications array, her shoulder slamming against metal as she rolled into position. Her squad had started with 23 soldiers 3 days ago. Now, only 7 remained. Lieutenant, the relay is operational, but we've got maybe 10 minutes of power left, reported Specialist Chung, her fingers dancing across the portable terminal she'd wired into the station's damaged systems. Main colony transmission hub went dark 20 minutes ago. We're the last functioning comms on the planet. Maya swallowed hard, tasting blood and dust. Keep it running. The evac ships need those coordinates. She checked her rifle's ammunition counter. 38 rounds. Not enough. Never enough against the Krell. Private Dawson slid in beside her, his young face streaked with soot and fear. Lieutenant, we got at least 60 Krell converging on our position. 2 heavy walkers backing them up. His voice cracked. There's no way. There's always a way, Dawson. Maya cut him off, refusing to let despair infect what remained of her squad. Humanity doesn't have the luxury of surrender. Not anymore. 3 months ago, the Krell had appeared in the outer colonies without warning. Their ships had darkened skies across 12 human worlds. Their message was simple. Humans were an evolutionary dead end, a species whose biological limitations made them unworthy of the stars. The Krell considered their invasion a mercy, a cleansing of the galaxy's genetic pool. Maya peered over the barrier, taking in the battlefield with experienced eyes. The communications relay sat atop a small hill, giving them modest tactical advantage. But the Krell were advancing methodically, using their superior weaponry to slowly constrict the defensive perimeter. Kowalski, what have we got left in the arsenal? Maya demanded. The stocky demolitions expert grimaced. 2 fragmentation grenades, 1 EMP charge, half a belt for the heavy machine gun, and whatever's in our personal weapons. He hesitated. And I still got that experimental thermal charge from the research facility, but we'd need to be at point-blank range for it to be effective. Maya nodded, her mind racing. The Krell were overwhelming them through superior technology and numbers, but they had one fatal flaw: arrogance. They believed so completely in their superiority that they often exposed themselves to unnecessary risks, especially when victory seemed assured. Zhang, how much longer until the AVAC coordinates transmit? 7 minutes, Lieutenant. But the Krell will be on us in 3. Maya made her decision. All right, listen up. We're going to make those bastards work for every meter. Rodriguez, set up the machine gun on the eastern approach. Sanchez, Kowalski, I want you on the northern perimeter with the frags. Dawson and Chen, you're with me. We're going to create a diversion on the western flank. What kind of diversion? Chen asked, checking the charge on his rifle. Maya's gaze hardened. The kind they won't expect. These Krell think we're just weak bags of flesh waiting to die. Let's show them what humanity does when backed into a corner. As her squad moved to their positions, Maya looked over at the advancing Krell forces. Their coordinated movements spoke of military precision, but there was something else, a disdain evident in their posture, in how casually they exposed themselves when firing. They didn't respect humans as warriors. Zhang, patch me into all local comms frequencies. I want every human soldier in range to hear this. The specialist nodded, fingers flying across her terminal. You're live in 3, 2, 1. Maya took a deep breath. This is Lieutenant Maya Carter of the 103rd Colonial Defense. To all remaining human forces on Proxima, the AVAC coordinates will broadcast from our position in 6 minutes. Hold your ground. The Krell think we're easy prey, but they've never faced humans with nothing left to lose. Remember what you're fighting for. Remember Earth. Remember your families. No surrender. Carter out. As she finished speaking, the first wave of Krell warriors crested the ridge below them. Their leader, distinguishable by elaborate markings on its exoskeleton, stepped forward. Its voice translator crackled with artificial coldness. Humans of Proxima Colony, the Krell commander announced, its voice echoing across the battlefield. Your resistance is both futile and illogical. You lack the physical strength, the natural armor, the evolutionary advantages to stand against us. Surrender now, and your deaths will be swift. Maya stood to her full height, deliberately exposing herself. You know, for a supposedly superior species, you missed something fundamental about evolution. The Krell commander tilted its head, mandibles clicking in what might have been amusement. And what might that be, human? Evolution isn't just about physical advantages. It's about adaptation. Maya raised her rifle. And humans, we're the most adaptable species in the galaxy. She fired a single shot, not at the commander, but at a damaged fuel cell behind the Krell lines. The explosion sent several warriors flying, disrupting their perfect formation. In that moment of confusion, Maya's squad unleashed everything they had. Rodriguez's machine gun roared to life, cutting down 3 Krell warriors before they could react. Sanchez and Kowalski hurled their grenades with precision, the explosions creating a wall of debris that temporarily blocked the northern approach. And on the western flank, Maya led Dawson and Chen in a flanking maneuver that caught the Krell completely by surprise. They're not expecting us to attack, Maya shouted as she slid into position behind an outcropping of rocks. They think we're just defending. Use it. For the next 3 minutes, the small squad fought with a ferocity that seemed to confuse the Krell. Where the aliens expected cowering defenders, they found aggressive counterattacks. Where they looked for predictable patterns, they encountered chaotic, seemingly suicidal charges that somehow resulted in dead Krell warriors. But it couldn't last. The Krell numbers were too great, their technology too advanced. One by one, Maya's soldiers began to fall. Rodriguez was the first, his position overrun when the machine gun finally ran dry. Chen took a plasma bolt to the chest while dragging a wounded Sanchez to cover. Lieutenant, Zhang called out, her voice urgent. Transmission complete. Evac coordinates sent. Maya nodded grimly. They'd accomplished their mission, but at terrible cost. Only she, Dawson, Kowalski, and Zhang remained, surrounded by advancing Krell. The Krell commander approached again, stepping over the bodies of fallen warriors with casual disdain. Impressive, for prey, but ultimately meaningless. Your transmission will not save you or your kind. Maya looked at her remaining squad members, a plan forming. Kowalski, the thermal charge. Do you still have it? The demolitions expert nodded, patting his chest pocket. Right here, LT. I need a distraction, Maya whispered. Something to get that commander and its guards clustered together. Dawson, young but understanding, nodded. I've got this, Lieutenant. Before Maya could stop him, the private stood and stepped forward, dropping his weapon. Hey, Commander, he shouted. You're right. We can't win. I want to surrender. The Krell commander's mandibles clicked in satisfaction. A wise choice, human. Perhaps one of you has sufficient intelligence after all. It gestured, and several guards moved forward to surround Dawson. Tell me, human, the commander said, looming over the young soldier. What finally made you accept the inevitability of your species' extinction? Dawson looked up, his eyes finding Maya's for one brief moment. Nothing. I just needed you to bunch up. He smiled. You really should have studied our history better. In that moment, Kowalski hurled the thermal charge with perfect accuracy. Maya shouted for Zhang to take cover as the device landed at the feet of the Krell commander. The explosion was blinding, a concentrated burst of heat that melted through even the reinforced Krell armor. The commander and 6 of its elite guards disappeared in a flash of superheated plasma. In the confusion that followed, Maya saw their opportunity. Fall back to the secondary position, she ordered. As they retreated, she saw Dawson's body amidst the charred Krell remains. Another name for the memorial, if any of them lived to build one. As night fell on Proxima Colony, Maya and her 2 remaining soldiers huddled in the ruins of what had once been a school. The Krell had temporarily withdrawn after the loss of their commander, giving the humans a brief respite. They'll be back by morning, Kowalski said, tending to a burn on his arm. With reinforcements. Maya nodded, her eyes on the night sky where distant flashes indicated orbital combat. But we bought time for the AVEX ships to get the coordinates. That's what matters. Zhang looked up from her portable terminal, her expression puzzled. Lieutenant, I'm picking up something strange. The Krell communication frequencies are in disarray. They're arguing among themselves. About what? Maya asked, moving to look at the terminal. From what I can translate, they're divided on how to proceed. The death of their commander has created a power vacuum. And Zhang paused, her eyes widening. They're afraid. Afraid? Of us? Kowalski scoffed. We've barely made a dent in their numbers. Not of our weapons, Zhang clarified. They're afraid of our unpredictability, our willingness to sacrifice. They don't understand it. Maya stared at the terminal, an idea forming, one that might just give humanity a fighting chance. The Krell had superior technology, superior numbers, superior physical strength, but they had never faced an enemy like humanity before. An enemy that refused to follow the logical patterns of warfare, that would sacrifice everything rather than submit. Zhang, can you broadcast on their frequencies? The specialist nodded slowly. Yes, but they'll trace it immediately. That's counting on it, Maya said, her exhaustion giving way to determination. We've been fighting their way. It's time to make them fight ours. As dawn broke over the horizon, Maya prepared for what would likely be her final battle. But for the first time since the invasion began, she felt something she had almost forgotten. Hope. Defiance ascendant. The twin suns of Proxima Colony rose over a landscape scarred by war. Lieutenant Maya Carter wiped grime from her tactical display as Specialist Zhang put the finishing touches on their makeshift transmission device. It's ready, Lieutenant, Zhang reported, connecting the final wire to the salvaged Krell communication module they'd recovered from a destroyed scout unit. But I still don't understand how this helps us. We're 3 soldiers against an army. Maya checked her rifle's charge, nearly depleted, before responding. The Krell fight as a collective, Zhang. Their tactics are perfect, their coordination flawless, but they lack imagination. She tapped the transmitter, and they've never encountered human psychological warfare. Kowalski looked skeptical as he distributed the remaining ammunition. Psychological warfare only works if your enemy has a psychology to exploit, LT. Every sentient species has fears, Kowalski, Maya countered. The Krell fear chaos. They fear unpredictability. Most of all, they fear an enemy that refuses to break even when defeat is certain. She stood, wincing at the pain from her untreated wounds. That's humanity's greatest weapon right now. The plan was desperate, born of necessity and the slim hope offered by the intercepted Krell communications. With their commander dead and their rigid hierarchy disrupted, the alien force was experiencing something unfamiliar. Uncertainty. Broadcasting on all Krell frequencies, Zhang announced, activating the device. Maya spoke clearly, her voice steady despite her exhaustion. "Attention Krell forces. This is Lieutenant Maya Carter of Earth Defense Force. Your commander underestimated us, as you all have. You believe yourselves to be evolutionarily superior, but you fail to account for humanity's greatest adaptation." She paused, letting her words sink in. "We don't accept inevitable defeat. We change the rules." She nodded to Zhang, who initiated the second phase of their plan. Across the battlefield, dozens of small devices activated simultaneously, emergency beacons salvaged from fallen soldiers, each emitting signals on frequencies the Krell used for targeting. "You have 1 hour to withdraw from Proxima Colony," Maya continued. "After that, you'll discover why advanced species throughout the galaxy have one rule: never corner humans." The transmission ended. Maya knew the threat was hollow. They had no super weapon, no reinforcements coming. But the Krell didn't know that. All they knew was that an inferior species had somehow managed to kill their commander and disrupt their perfect formation. "Think they bought it?" Kowalski asked, checking his sidearm. "Doesn't matter if they did," Maya replied. "We just need to create enough confusion to—" A distant explosion interrupted her, followed by several more in quick succession. Zhang rushed to her terminal. "Lieutenant, the Krell forces are firing on our decoy beacons. They're shooting at shadows." Maya allowed herself a grim smile. Phase 1 complete. Now for Phase 2. She turned to her remaining squad members. "This is where it gets dangerous. We need to hit their command structure while they're disorganized." Intelligence gathered before communications went dark had indicated that the Krell maintained a central command post approximately 2 kilometers from their position. With their primary commander dead, control would have defaulted to the next in the hierarchy, a target that, if eliminated, could throw the entire invasion force into disarray. "We'll never make it 2 kilometers through their lines," Kowalski objected. "We won't have to," Maya said, pointing to a maintenance tunnel entrance partially hidden by debris. "The colony's utility tunnels run throughout this sector." Zhang found schematics indicating we can get within 50 meters of their position underground. The tunnels were dark and partially collapsed in sections, forcing the 3 soldiers to navigate carefully through tight spaces filled with broken pipes and electrical hazards. The air grew stale as they ventured deeper, their helmet lights casting long shadows on concrete walls streaked with moisture. "Krell tactics are based on open field superiority," Maya explained as they moved. "They've never fought a guerrilla war. They don't understand fighting from the shadows, striking weak points, disappearing before they can respond." "You sound like you've studied them," Zhang observed. Maya's expression darkened. "My previous posting was on Arcturus Aya. I was the only survivor of my unit. I've had time to learn how they think." She paused at a junction, consulting the schematic on her wrist display. "This way." After 40 minutes of careful navigation, they'd reached their exit point, a maintenance hatch that, according to their outdated maps, should open near the Krell command post. Maya peered through a narrow viewing slit, confirming their position. "I count 8 guards," she whispered. "Standard perimeter formation. The command center appears to be that modified colony admin building." Kowalski frowned. 8 elite guards with plasma weapons against our 3 nearly depleted rifles. "Not loving those odds, Lieutenant. We're not going to fight them head-on," Maya replied. She removed a small device from her pack, the EMP charge, their last remaining special ordnance. "Zhang, can you reconfigure this to emit on the frequency their communication systems use?" The specialist took the device, examining it carefully. "I think so, but it would reduce the effective range significantly." "We don't need range. We need chaos." Maya outlined her plan quickly, aware that time was running out. The decoy beacons would only distract the Krell for so long before they realized the deception. 20 minutes later, Kowalski emerged from a different maintenance hatch nearly 200 meters from the command post. He carried the modified EMP device and their last fragmentation grenade. Moving with careful precision, He positioned himself behind an abandoned ground transport vehicle and activated the device. Instantly, the Krell guards around the command post began moving erratically. Their coordinated movements disrupted as the modified EMP flooded their communication channels with static. Several broke formation, moving toward Kowalski's position. At that moment, Maya and Zhang emerged from their hatch, using the confusion to approach the command post from the opposite direction. They moved swiftly from cover to cover, avoiding the disoriented guards as the EMP continued to disrupt the Krell's ability to coordinate. 30 seconds until they adapt their frequencies, Zhang warned as they reached the command post's rear entrance. Maya nodded, readying her rifle. Kowalski, execute Phase 3. In the distance, a powerful explosion rocked the area as Kowalski detonated the fragmentation grenade. The remaining guards immediately moved toward the new threat, leaving the command post temporarily vulnerable. Now, Maya ordered, bursting through the entrance with Zhang close behind. Inside, they found 3 Krell officers gathered around a holographic display of the battlefield. The aliens reacted with surprising speed despite the communication disruption, 2 of them drawing weapons while the third, clearly the new commander based on its distinctive markings, moved to activate an alarm. Maya fired first, her shots precisely targeting the joints in the Krell officers' exoskeletons, the weak points she'd identified during her previous encounters. 2 went down, their sophisticated armor useless against attacks aimed at the unprotected connection points. The commander, however, was faster, avoiding her shots and closing the distance with alarming speed. One of its 4 arms struck out, sending Maya's rifle flying while another grabbed her by the throat, lifting her off the ground. Primitive tactics, the Krell hissed through its translator. Did you truly believe you could defeat evolutionary superiority with crude deceptions? Maya struggled for breath as the commander's grip tightened. Through darkening vision, she saw Zhang take aim, only to be disarmed by the commander's free limbs. Your species is an aberration, the Krell continued. You lack natural weapons, natural armor, natural strength. By all evolutionary logic, you should have perished on your homeworld millennia ago. Despite the crushing pressure on her throat, Maya managed a smile. That's your mistake, she gasped, thinking evolution is only about physical advantages. With a final surge of strength, Maya reached to her belt and unsheathed her combat knife, the weapon she'd been saving for this exact moment. With precision born of desperation, she drove the blade into the narrow gap between the commander's head carapace and body armor. The Krell's grip loosened immediately as the blade severed critical neural pathways. Maya fell to the ground, gasping for air as the commander collapsed beside her. Zhang, she wheezed, struggling to her feet. The control console. The specialist rushed to the holographic display, her fingers dancing across the alien interface. I can access their battle network from here. Their entire command structure, deployment patterns, everything. Maya staggered to her side, her throat bruised, but her determination intact. Send it all. Every piece of data. Then set their systems to broadcast on emergency frequencies. Outside, they could hear the sounds of renewed combat as Kowalski led the confused Krell guards on a chase through the ruins. They had minutes at most before reinforcements arrived. Transmission complete, Zhang announced. What now, Lieutenant? Maya studied the holographic display, which showed the positions of all Krell forces across the colony. For the first time, she could see the full picture and an opportunity. The Krell operate as a hive. Cut off the Queen, and the drones falter. She pointed to a larger ship landed at the colony spaceport. That's their command vessel. With what we've learned about their communication vulnerabilities and the tactical data you just transmitted, our forces might be able to target it. Zhang looked skeptical. What forces? We're all that's left on the ground. Not on the ground, Maya said, pointing to orbital signatures on the display. The evacuation fleet. They're still up there, fighting to break through. Using the Krell's own communication system, Maya sent a targeted message to the human defense fleet. including all the tactical data they'd acquired and the specific vulnerabilities they'd identified. This is Lieutenant Maya Carter to all Earth Defense Force vessels. The Krell aren't invincible. They can be beaten. We've uploaded tactical data on their command structure, communication vulnerabilities, and armor weak points. Their ground forces are in disarray. Strike now. The response was immediate. The orbital display showed human warships suddenly changing formation, concentrating fire on specific points in the Krell fleet that had previously seemed impenetrable. Using the intelligence Maya had provided, they targeted communication nodes and command ships with surgical precision. "It's working," John breathed, watching as the Krell fleet began to fragment, their perfect formation dissolving into isolated units. Maya nodded, her eyes on a different part of the display. "We need to move. Now." She pointed to a section of readings that showed Krell reinforcements converging on their position. "Get Kowalski on comms. Tell him to meet us at Extraction Point Delta." As they fled the command post, the ground shook beneath their feet. Looking up, they saw Krell ships falling from the sky, struck by human weapons that now targeted their previously hidden vulnerabilities. "Lieutenant," Kowalski's voice crackled over the comms as he rejoined them. "Please tell me that's our doing." Maya nodded, her exhaustion momentarily forgotten as they watched the Krell invasion force unravel around them. "Humanity's doing, Kowalski. All of us together." 3 days later, Maya stood on the observation deck of the EDF Resilience, watching as transport ships continued the evacuation of Proxima Colony. The battle wasn't over. The Krell still held significant territory, but for the first time since the invasion began, humanity was fighting back effectively. Admiral Chen, commander of the defense fleet, stood beside her, reviewing the tactical data on his tablet. "Your intelligence changed everything, Lieutenant. We've already adapted our weapon systems to target the vulnerabilities you identified. The Krell are retreating from 3 colony worlds." Maya nodded, her throat still bandaged from her encounter with the Krell commander. "They underestimated us, Admiral. They thought their physical and technological advantages guaranteed victory. A common mistake when facing humans," the Admiral agreed. "History is filled with technically superior forces defeated by humans who simply refuse to accept defeat." As Maya looked out at the stars, she thought of Dawson, Rodriguez, Chen, Sanchez, and all the others who had fallen. Their sacrifice had revealed the truth that might yet save humanity. In the face of extinction, humans didn't surrender. They adapted. They fought harder. They changed the rules. "The Krell commander asked me a question before it died," Maya said quietly. "It wanted to know what excuse we had for continuing to fight when defeat was logically inevitable." "And what did you tell it?" the Admiral asked. Maya turned from the window, her gaze steady and determined. "I told it the truth. Humans don't need an excuse to survive. It's what we do best."